And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gents. This is your boy Casanova from Orlando, Florida, on this awesome international podcast, Good Wine and Great Laughs, the podcast for wine lovers, ladies and gents. Summer movies, reviews, and hot topic discussions. I am your host, Casanova. If you are new to my YouTube channel, what I do here every Saturday morning at 10 a.m., I have the wine of the day, ladies and gents. I'm going to open this wine here shortly. I'm going to give you some information about it. And then after finish, I'll give the rate. And the picture of this wine bottle is going to be available on all my social medias, ladies and gents. So if you like to what to hear from my review, you can go to my social medias and take this picture to any wine store near you if you like to get it. No, the wine of the day, ladies and gents. And after the wine of the day, I have the topic of the day. And the topic of the day are always topics that can affect our lives directly or indirectly, ladies and gents. And during the summer months of June and July, I come here and I do summer movies reviews, ladies and gents, for any movies that come out on the movie theater or any other platform such as HBO Max, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and so forth. All right, ladies and gents, so if you like the work that I do, I appreciate your support. If you can only do 3 things, I appreciate you to subscribe, click on the like button, ladies and gents, and share any of the videos that you watch for my YouTube channel with at least 5 people. You know, I appreciate your support. All right, so today is Saturday, August the 8th, 2026. And the weather here in Orlando is going to be partly cloudy in the morning with thunderstorms developing in the afternoon. Highs of 90 degrees and lows of 76. And it's raining for the past today, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Gonna be some thunderstorm and more likely tomorrow and until Monday, ladies and gentlemen. So you visit Florida, you pick up the wrong one time. You are now in the hurricane season from June all the way to November. You're going to have some thunderstorms some time of the day. All right, so let's talk about the one of the day. Once again, you have another St. ALBA, and last Saturday, ladies, and like I say, you have the red wine. I had the Malbec, and I told you I'm going to cook some steaks, some meat. I cooked some delicious grilled picanha, and definitely the wine taste for me was much, much better. I told I gave an 8, I believe. And with pair with any grilled meat, more likely the flavor will enhance. All right, so drink the red wine, the Malbec by itself. I gave an 8, and after I cooked the grilled meat and I ate and I was drinking the wine, I give a 9 for that Santa Alba, the Malbec. Now this one here is a Sauvignon Blanc, same brand, same region, same country. Chile is a vintage of 2025 from Central Valley, Chile. Alcohol percent of this wine is 12% per volume. Another vegan wine for the vegan people that look for some wine that you like to drink. Santa Alba is your brand. And once again, say right here, our Sauvignon Blanc has a bright yellow color with a green highlights, which are followed by intense aromas of citrus and green apples with hints of grass. This light body wine is both fresh and fruity with a crispy acidity and an appealing finish. A great companion for green salads, fresh fish, and chicken. Well, I cooked some pasta, and that's what I'm going to be today. I made some pasta with you and for me, and with some shredded Parmesan cheese, parsley, and Italian seasoning. And I still have the leftover of the picanha that I grilled. So I sliced it up and I put on top of it. So that's what's going to be. I'm going to pair it, even though red meat is the red wine. I don't care. This pasta will be with the grilled picanha and some Sauvignon Blanc. Let's break the norm a little bit. Oh man, I poured half a bottle. So we'll see what this Sauvignon Blanc is all about. Ooh. Definitely, you can smell some citrus. Definitely smell a hint of lemon zest, ladies and gents. That's what I'm smelling. Definitely, and right, also can smell a little bit of green apples. That's what I'm smelling here. Clear wine, nice color. You can taste and feel the acidity on the back of the palate. Yes, and I can taste it. Right, it's a combination of green apple and lemon zest at the end of my palate, ladies and gents. It is a good Sauvignon. But when it comes to Chilean wine, I said this before, I'm going to say it again. Papi, to me, is the best. You know, compare the Papi Sauvignon Blanc with this one. I prefer the Papi. Papi. But for this one right here, that's a Sauvignon from Chile. I will give you an 8.5 for this one right here, ladies and gents. So once again, if you like to find this wine on the store, the picture is available on all my social medias. Go over there. Same name as the podcast, Good Wine and Great Laughs. Instagram, my Facebook page. You see, more likely going to see a video on TikTok for the podcast episode, and the pictures are going to be available there. Our fan base is there too. All right, ladies and gents. So we are now beginning season 13, episode 1. And the topic of the day, like I say, topic of the day is Infantino and FIFA corruptions part 1 and part 2, ladies and gents. I want to give credit to ZETEO that they have 3 parts. I do not want to play all 3 parts because this video is going to be close to 2 hours, 1 hour and 40 minutes, some change. So I decided to make part 1 and 2 today. And next Saturday, I come with part 3 to finalize this situation about FIFA. For those that watch the World Cup, now everybody, the whole world could see how much Infantino was kissing Argentina asses, and plus all the referees, because every foul, and everything else the other teams were doing, the referees were right there. But when it came to Argentina, they let a lot of stuff go. Argentina players, by history, they play very, very, very dirty. We from Brazil are playing against them for many, many years. And then there's now the World Cup of 1972. There was a robbery right there. They basically was discovered that they played. Brazil was playing against Argentina, and the Brazil scored a goal, and the referee completely illegally eliminated that goal. They ended up disqualifying Brazil. Argentina player, I believe it was Chile, the Chilean players ended up found out that they play the Chilean players to win 6-0, 6-1, something like that. That's what they need to qualify. And then there's history about that when they play against Brazil, they put something in the water for the Brazilian players to sedate the players. And then in 1986, they have the man of God, the goal, the Maradona score, it's his hands, ladies and gentlemen. So the corruption between now what the world saw in this World Cup is not the tip of, it was just the tip of iceberg, because you already know the Brazilians. So I'll give my 2 cents about the whole video after, but let's watch here one game part 1 and part 2, and once again credits to ZETEO. And then next Saturday I will play part 3. So let's play this video right here while I eat my pasta and my grilled picanha, because enough talking, it is showtime. So first of all, like I said, this is a 3-part documentary, discovery journalism, if you want to call. So the first part 1 was before the World Cup started, and then the second one is going to be probably in the middle, and the third one probably is going to be by the end of the World Cup. So the first episode is they are talking about before the World Cup started. So for you to have an idea. And here we go.
The World Cup is almost here, and football fans around the US are excited about the tournament coming back to the land of the free after 32 years. But one man has been making the 2026 World Cup all about himself.
I may put on shorts. I look extremely good in shorts and enjoying the play. I may try and play. I'm a very good athlete.
For Donald Trump, it's always about ego, his ego. And a World Cup gives him a platform like no other on the global stage. It also gives him a tool to distract. From his illegal war in Iran, from his aiding of a genocide in Gaza, from ICE kidnapping people off of the streets of the US, from his disastrous mismanagement of the economy. Governments using sports to sanitize their crimes and misdeeds is nothing new. There's even a term for it: sports washing. It's an accusation regularly levied at non-Western countries, including recent and future World Cup hosts like Russia, Qatar, Saudi Arabia.
Russia is presenting a friendly face and photogenic scenery, but human rights campaigners are urging visitors to dig a little deeper.
Is Qatar succeeding in sports washing its image?
The decision to name Saudi Arabia as the host nation for the 2034 Men's Soccer World Cup has sparked criticism over the country's human rights record and accusations of what's described as sports washing.
But sports washing is happening right here in the United States with this year's World Cup. And it raises the question, should we have even been allowed to host it in the first place? I'm Mehdi Hassan, and this is The Dark Side of the World Cup, a 3-part series from ZETEO where we'll show you how FIFA has colluded with authoritarian leaders for close to a century. This is Episode 1, the United States. With the amount of time I spend talking, writing, tweeting about politics, you might be surprised to learn that I'm also a big football fan. I've supported Liverpool my whole life, and in a dream come true was at the 2022 World Cup final in Doha. More on Qatar later in this series. But the point is, when it was announced in 2018 that the US would be hosting the 2026 World Cup, along with Canada and Mexico, I was thrilled. A World Cup is supposed to be a festival, a sporting extravaganza that brings people together. To have that in the country I live in and have made my home, well, what could be better? But as the tournament gets closer, I've been getting less and less excited because it's happening under the leadership of Donald J. Trump. And I know you might say, come on, Mehdi, it's sports. Can't we just have a bit of fun? Why do you have to make everything about politics? But I promise you, it's not my fault. Politics is connected with almost everything, including sports, especially the FIFA World Cup. And Donald Trump has just taken it to another level.
We are setting records on ticket sales. Nobody's ever really, and FIFA's never, you look at the numbers, nobody's ever seen anything like the kind of numbers we're doing.
Soccer in the United States, we seem to never call it that because we have a little bit of a conflict with another thing that's called football.
And I think you're going to have an event the likes of which maybe the world has never seen. Based on the enthusiasm that I've seen, I have never seen anything like it.
This World Cup, whether we like it or not, is Trump-centered. Listen to Craig Foster, a human rights activist and former professional footballer who played 29 international matches for Australia.
Trump has single-handedly obliterated the false concept that sport is apolitical or somehow neutral. It's not, of course. The awarding of hosting events is inherently political, as is the hosting of them, of course, in order to project a certain image of countries, whether it's Qatar, Russia, or Brazil, or Australia with the Women's World Cup only a couple of years ago. The difference with Trump is that he's individually politicized the entire event in a way that we haven't seen probably in my lifetime, really.
It's kind of impossible to ignore. And we're not the only ones who see it that way. Jules Boykoff is another person you'll be hearing from throughout this series. He also played football professionally and is now a political scientist at Pacific University in Oregon. He's the author of a new book on this very topic called Red Card, the 2026 World Cup, Sports Washing and the FIFA Greed Machine.
This is the most political World Cup in history. So anything could basically happen under President Trump.
Jules has a point. Trump really could do anything during this tournament. He's already proved that over the past year and a half. He's bombed more than half a dozen countries and put a travel ban on almost 40 nations, 4 of which are participating in the World Cup. He's also threatened to bomb or annex our World Cup co-hosts, Mexico and Canada. So given all of that and what he's done in Iran, Venezuela, Gaza, as well as his deployment of basically a secret police force in the form of ICE on our streets, right here at home, I keep coming back to the question of whether the US should even have been allowed to host the World Cup under Donald Trump. For Jules, the answer is clear.
The United States absolutely should not be allowed to host the 2026 World Cup. The United States is creating mayhem both abroad and at home. It's openly violating the human rights ideas that FIFA supposedly stands for, and that the United States, Canada, and Mexico promised that they would fulfill when they got this event in the first place.
Now, whether Jules or I like it, the tournament isn't moving. It's too late for that, of course. It also might be too late for me to get a ticket to a game, as I still haven't got one, and this is, of course, the most expensive World Cup ever. Now, though there were some calls for a boycott, it never gathered real steam. It was never going to. The US is simply too powerful, and there aren't enough world leaders out there with a backbone to stand up to Trump. But one other reason it was never going to happen was this guy. Meet Gianni Infantino. The FIFA president has not only not stood up to Trump, he's cozied up to him, coddled him, and enabled him to make this tournament all about Trump. Liking this video? Then don't just watch, hit like, share, and subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a video or live show. But if you want early access to exclusive content, then you have to head to ZETEO.com and subscribe now. You'll be supporting fearless, independent journalism. Since Trump came back to office, Infantino has probably spent more time with him than a lot of his own cabinet members. And the sycophancy has been nauseating.
We brought as well this, which is the winner's trophy. It is the trophy that the winner of the FIFA World Cup wins. Only the FIFA president, presidents of countries, and then those who win can touch it, because it's for winners only. And since you are a winner, of course, you can as well touch it. It's pretty heavy.
Yeah. Can I keep it?
For you. Well, you can keep it after the World Cup.
We're not giving it back. That's serious.
It fits well.
That goes very well in the wall right over there. We'll put it right below the angel.
But what you might not know is that according to Trump, Infantino did let him keep the trophy from the Club World Cup, another FIFA tournament the US hosted last year. And don't even get me started on how Trump made himself the center of attention at that trophy presentation. The winners, Chelsea, only took home a replica. The original 24-carat gold trophy, that's reportedly still sitting in the Trump White House. But the most egregious example of Infantino sucking up to Trump was in December at the draw for the World Cup at what the US government is now insisting we call the Trump Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. It was there that Infantino awarded Trump the FIFA Peace Prize, something he seemed to have just made up, invented, specifically to make Trump feel better about not winning the Nobel Peace Prize.
This is your Peace Prize. There is also a beautiful medal for you that you can wear everywhere you want to go.
This is truly one of the great honors of my life.
Awarding Trump with a peace prize felt like a joke at the time, but it's only looked more absurd in the months since, as we've watched him bomb Venezuela and Iran, kidnapping one country's leader and assassinating the others. He's also put forward a Gaza reconstruction plan that doesn't center the Palestinians and is aligned with his own previously stated ambitions of owning and taking over their homeland. By giving him a peace prize, Craig believes Infantino has made football a co-conspirator in Trump's crimes.
The fact that Trump is currently one of two or three, alongside probably Netanyahu and Putin, one of the greatest examples of anti-peace behaviour in the world, has now put FIFA in a place that it can't escape from. You know, unfortunately, in posterity, FIFA is now closely allied to the US president, who is a direct supporter of genocide committed by Israel in Palestine, who is a direct supporter of apartheid, as ruled by the International Court of Justice, again being perpetrated by Israel. Infantino has taken no action on these and at the same time has supported Trump in his actions, for example, wanting to create, this real estate bonanza, and this board of peace, in relation to Gaza, all of which are completely antithetical to the notions and the substance of international law. So Infantino is directly and publicly rewarding someone who is proudly not only opposing international law in his actions, but actually is fundamentally undermining it. The so-called rules-based system that the world has relied on since the Second World War. The reason why that's most important for football, even more than other sports, as bad as that would be, is that FIFA actually have a human rights policy and are bound to international law under their statutes.
Wait, play that again.
FIFA actually have a human rights policy and are bound to international law under their statutes.
It's hard to believe, given the way they behave, but FIFA actually has a human rights policy.
Exactly.
Its commitments include embracing all international human rights documents, such as the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, and to avoid causing or contributing to adverse human rights impacts through its own activities. Again, for the stick-to-football crowd who don't want people to talk about politics at this World Cup, well, don't blame us, blame FIFA. You can't have a human rights policy and then not expect people to point out when you're not living up to those ideals. They've invited this scrutiny by trying to project a certain image. Here's Craig again.
FIFA and global sports talk ad infinitum about being a force for good in the world. And if they're going to continue to propagate that, that slogan and that idea, then they have to live up to it. And by giving a peace prize and by not pushing back and by allowing Trump to shape the World Cup to his own designs and to bully other countries, then they certainly are breaching or violating any idea that slogan is real.
And when it comes to bullying, the situation with Iran takes the cake. Never before has the host nation of a World Cup just bombed one of the participating nations in the tournament. And Trump has made it clear how little he cares if the team ends up coming to play or not, literally telling Politico in March, "I really don't care." Now, maybe you're someone who just doesn't actually care about the US bullying other countries, or don't think it's relevant to whether or not it should host a World Cup. I personally don't agree with that position. But let's just say I accept it as your position for a moment. Well, what about what's happening here at home? The fascism, the extremism, the violence.
ICE is defending its actions over a cell phone video that shows a federal agent smashing the car window of an undocumented Guatemalan man as he waited for his lawyer to arrive.
Learning a Sacramento woman has been detained by ICE agents at San Francisco International Airport. The whole incident caught here on camera.
Where's the badge? This is an illegal arrest. Show the badge number.
Newly released cell phone video obtained by CBS News appears to show the ICE agent's point of view and what are likely Renee Good's last words.
That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you.
Trump's secret police, his masked goons, have been running rampant since he came back to power, violently kidnapping and locking up not just foreigners but Americans too, killing them on the streets. Is that what you expect from a World Cup host in a World Cup year? Isn't ICE going to be a problem for this tournament?
The presence of immigration and customs enforcement is a serious threat for the 2026 World Cup. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons said that ICE was going to play a key role at the World Cup. That is off-putting to a lot of people who might like to travel to the United States. It's also off-putting to a lot of people who already live here who don't want to deal with ICE. I mean, let's be honest, ICE has been rampaging through cities across the United States. They look like they just arrived from robbing a liquor store and now they're at work, rampaging and attacking and even killing people. So I think the fear is quite real around ICE in the United States right now.
And that fear is being felt on the ground in World Cup host cities like Los Angeles, where there is a threat of an increased ICE presence at stadiums. The fear is particularly real for Latin American communities that have been targeted by this Trump administration. And it's worth pointing out that these are communities that are in many ways the heart of football fandom here in the United States. Hispanics account for more than a quarter of the sports fans in this country, and also made up 40% of US viewers for the final of the 2024 Euros.
Football is soccer, I guess, is really relevant to a lot of immigrant communities in the United States. And here in LA specifically, we have a large Latinx community. I grew up with really, I have really great memories of watching the World Cup with family and a lot of nostalgia around that as a young person.
That's Catherine Funes, an anti-ICE activist born and raised in LA. She's part of Nolympics LA, a group that's organizing around immigration, gentrification, and policing issues ahead of the 2028 Olympics. That's right. Donald Trump has another global sports event to use as a propaganda tool before his term is over. Kill me now. Before the Olympics come to town, LA is hosting 8 games during this summer's FIFA World Cup. And Catherine says mega sporting events like these are used as a pretext for a hyper-militarization of the police.
Another piece of the World Cup and how it's being laid out as a testing ground for future mega events to happen, specifically in LA, is around a policy called the NSSC, a National Special Security Event, which is a designation administered by the Department of Homeland Security for events that, as they describe, could be susceptible to acts of terror, international interference. The presidential inauguration is an NSSC, the Republican National Convention, Democratic National Convention are NSSC events, and also these sporting events like the World Cup, the Super Bowl, and the Olympics are also given that designation. What this designation does is open up lines of collaboration, communication, and resource sharing between local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies. So in LA, despite movements calling for ICE to get out of our communities, to make LA a sanctuary city, it's really difficult to achieve those things when we have this underlying piece of policy that isn't even administered by Los Angeles governance, that is only in effect because we have these mega events.
And the amount of money these events allow the Trump administration to throw at this crackdown is mind-boggling. And it's redefining how they'll be able to police even when the games are over.
So what the NSSC also does is set up certain pots of money for security funding that different law enforcement agencies can access. So there is now over $1 billion of funding available for Olympics-related security funding that LAPD at the end of January requested $100 million from, citing weapon purchases, vehicle purchases, staff, increasing staff. And then DHS also has another pot of several hundreds of millions of dollars for World Cup related security events. The weapons and the force that are acquired using the funding that's designated for these events long outlast when the events take place. So once all the fanfare is over, the people who are in town leave, media leaves, people who are in LA are still going to be living with the lasting legacy of what it means for LAPD, LASD to have more weapons in their arsenal, bigger labor force that they can pull from.
Can you imagine if this was happening in another part of the world? South Africa, Brazil, Russia, Qatar, ahead of their recent World Cups? Police being armed to the teeth in order to crack down on minority communities? Western governments and Western media would have been all over it, rightly condemning what was happening, maybe even calling for boycotts. In 2022, the BBC actually decided not to show the opening ceremony of the Qatar World Cup, instead airing programming about the country's human rights record, especially its treatment of its migrant population. We asked the BBC if they're planning a similar move for this year's opening ceremony in the US. They said their 2026 coverage plans haven't been confirmed yet. We'll wait and see what they do, but I think it's safe to say that we just aren't seeing the same level of outrage from the international community ahead of this World Cup. So, why is the US exempt from this kind of criticism? Here's Jules Boykoff's view.
When it comes to how people talk about the World Cup and how they talk about sports washing, a massive ethnocentric double standard abounds. When you're talking about Russia and the 2018 World Cup under Vladimir Putin, people would always talk about how it was an example of sports washing. Same for Qatar in 2022. And in fact, it was. They were using those events to deflect attention and to burnish their national reputations, to become more popular at home and abroad. But people are very hesitant to do that when it comes to the United States or other countries that are considered to be democracies, now actually kind of a debatable term in the United States right now. Well, I think the reason why people don't necessarily apply the sports washing label equally to places like the United States boils down to racism on one hand, boils down to the power of imperialism, boils down to the power of propaganda. Brazil, South Africa, that's where you have to go to worry about crime, but apparently not in the United States.
As Jules said, there were plenty of legitimate criticisms of Qatar hosting the last World Cup, and we'll talk about them in the next episode of this series. But a fear of violence wasn't one of them. I can tell you personally, having gone to the final in Doha, it was a festive, family-friendly affair with people from all around the world celebrating. But as people gear up to travel here for this summer's World Cup, if they can even get a visa and get into the country in the first place, the threat is extremely real.
If you're a fan from Brazil, Latin America, Africa, Asia, and you come to the United States to cheer on your team at the World Cup, you risk getting apprehended by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. There's just no two-way about it.
It could happen at the border on your way into the country, but it could also happen to fans at stadiums. I mean, just imagine for a second. Let's say you're a Colombian fan at their game against Portugal at the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami on June the 27th. You've spent thousands of dollars on travel, tickets, accommodation, and you go to the stadium to watch the game, but you leave your passport in your hotel room. Suddenly, an ICE agent grabs you saying you're an illegal immigrant, and the next thing you know, you're in a gulag in El Salvador, or worse, Guantanamo Bay. Now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has sought to calm down fears over ICE's presence at the World Cup, but can we really trust him? Because it was only a few months ago that Todd Lyons, the acting director of ICE, said his agents would play a key part in World Cup security. And when asked about ICE in December, the executive director of the White House's task force on the World Cup, one Andrew Giuliani, Rudy's son, he said the president never rules anything out. Maybe Rubio's reported claims that ICE won't be at stadiums is aimed to counter the chilling effect Lyons and Giuliani's comments may have had on World Cup preparations. The number of tourists coming into the US since Trump came back to power has already gone down. But when it comes to the World Cup specifically, something host nations usually see as a huge boom for their tourist industries, it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. The majority of hotels in the tournament's host cities have said bookings are way below forecasted levels, with many hotels calling the tournament here in the US a non-event. Foreign fans are scared. And can you really blame them?
Even if you don't get snapped up by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, you might get attacked by a local band of yahoos who are basically just xenophobic and taking their cues from the Trump administration. So add to that the ambient gun violence that happens in the country, where we have a mass shooting on average every single day of 2026 so far. And you've got a real recipe for disaster. And look, I don't want to be that guy that's pointing all this out. I should say, I love soccer. I played soccer at a high level for half of my life. And I know that soccer has a lot of power. But with that power comes responsibility, and the people overseeing the 2026 World Cup, whether you're talking about the Trump administration or Infantino and FIFA, they have totally abandoned their responsibility to the sport of soccer, and that includes the safety of fans from traveling abroad.
The World Cup is supposed to be about unity. One game, one planet, Billions of fans watching it together, 90 minutes at a time. But the 2026 tournament arrives in a Trump-led United States that is consumed by nationalism and fascism, by division and fear. A president and a government that talk about freedom while threatening migrants, protesters, journalists, their own citizens. And FIFA, an organization that claims to stand for human rights, for dignity, for unity, hasn't challenged any of it. No. It's embraced it, enabled it, profited off of it. That is the dark side of this World Cup. We'll see you soon for episode 2, where we'll look back at other times the World Cup has been used as a propaganda tool by authoritarian leaders. Trump certainly isn't the first. Until then, goodbye from me. World Cup 2026 is giving us tons of storylines. Can Lionel Messi and Argentina defend their title? Can England finally get over the hump after 60 years? Inshallah. And who will win the coveted Golden Boot? It's going to be very easy to get carried away with the narratives on the field, but as we explained in episode 1 of this series, there is always something darker going on as well. I'm Mehdi Hassan, and this is the dark side of the World Cup, a 3-part series from ZETEO where we'll show you how FIFA has colluded with authoritarian leaders and turned a blind eye to human rights abuses for close to a century. 4 times, 4 World Cups. That's what we'll be unpacking in episode 2. Donald Trump has made sure that we'll never be able to think about this World Cup without thinking about him.
You're part of the FIFA team. That's good. That's good.
But he's not the first leader, and the US is not the first country to have done that. The history of fascist leaders making a World Cup all about themselves dates all the way back to the man who coined the F word. Yes, Benito Mussolini. That's right, the word we use as a pejorative today was actually proudly adopted by Mussolini in 1919 to describe his movement, Fasci Italiani di Combattimento. Excuse my Italian. Mussolini, who became Italy's totalitarian prime minister 3 years later, understood the potential that football had to further his autocratic and nationalistic project. And so when FIFA announced in 1929 that the first World Cup would take place the following year, Il Duce, as he was known, wanted it for himself. When Uruguay were chosen as the hosts instead, he threw a bit of a fit, as fascists often do, and refused to send an Italian team to the tournament in 1930. But what he heard about from afar only further confirmed to him that he wanted to host the next one.
The World Cup in Uruguay showed that the football for the passion of the public could be the great medium of propaganda for the regime.
That's Daniele Serapiglia. He knows what he's talking about because he's actually one of the world's leading experts on Mussolini's use of football for propaganda. And Il Duce got the platform he so desperately wanted when he was awarded hosting rights for the second World Cup.
He understood that sport is more power because the peculiarity of sport, of football, is this possibility to create this emotional link with political power and people. Because football involved a lot of people. Football could be the space to make the fascism great among the people. Because in the totalitarian regime, the fascism would to control all aspects of the life.
Controlling all aspects of life. Let's just be clear on what that meant by the time of Mussolini's 1934 World Cup. By that point, Mussolini had banned opposition and political parties, required loyalty oaths from civil servants, and had secret police agents causing violence in the streets. Some of that sound familiar? Mussolini's secret police even kidnapped and murdered Giacomo Matteotti, his most vocal critic, who was the leader of the Socialist Party. And internationally, Mussolini went into the 1934 tournament having already presided over a genocide in Libya, which killed as many as 83,000 people. Daniele says the Italian national team gave Il Duce the perfect platform to wash away these crimes. He used them to project an image of Italian masculinity known as the new man that represented his fascist movement. The fact that the Italian team ended up winning the 1934 World Cup didn't hurt either.
The new man was the symbol of the building of fascism. The new man was a sportsman man, but was the military man ready to defend the nation, to defend the fascist ideals. And the sporting heroes were central in this idea. The victory of Italy showed the force of Italy, show the force a new Italian man.
The victory itself wasn't without controversy. Mussolini pressured referees to favour Italy, and their quarter-final against Spain had some especially dubious decisions, so much so that the official who presided over the match was later suspended. And when Italy beat Czechoslovakia in the final, they were not only given the World Cup, but a separate trophy called the Coppa del Duce. They were also given a photo of the man himself. I don't know about you, but I could totally see Donald Trump doing something like that in a few weeks' time. Our only saving grace, the reason we'll be spared from that, the US team has no chance of winning this year's World Cup. Sorry. Liking this video? Then don't just watch, hit like, share and subscribe. And tap the bell so you never miss a video or live show. But if you want early access to exclusive content, then you have to head to ZETEO.com and subscribe now. You'll be supporting fearless, independent journalism. But back to Mussolini. I already gave you his rap sheet from before the 1934 World Cup, but let's not forget what happened after it. An invasion and occupation of Ethiopia where Mussolini's troops used chemical weapons and carried out mass executions. And at home, racial laws that targeted Italian Jews, many of whom were later also rounded up and sent to Nazi concentration camps. Yes, Mussolini teamed up with Adolf Hitler in World War II. But despite that legacy, according to Daniele, the players and coaches from that 1934 team who were so deeply associated with Mussolini somehow weren't tainted. Instead, they had stadiums named after them and are still seen as heroes by much of the Italian public. That's how powerful propaganda can be. In fact, Daniele says that many in Italy still see the 30s as the glory days. On one level, it's shocking, but when you really think about it, it's not surprising at all, because we know this kind of sentiment still exists in Italy. It's why the far-right neo-fascist Giorgia Meloni was able to become the country's prime minister 4 years ago. And the collective erasure Daniele talks about when it comes to the 1934 World Cup makes it easy to understand why.
We don't have this memory, but already in 1919, during the Italian World Cup in Italy, I remember this fiction of Italian public television about the World Cup in 1934, that the politics is not present in this. Just was present the victory of Italy in this World Cup, and not this link with the fascism.
Ultimately, Daniele says, a lot of Italians simply haven't reckoned with the country's dark past.
They're not ashamed about this, and a lot of people, the young generation, don't remember the 1934 World Cup.
Jasmine Gars, an Argentine-American journalist at NPR, says it's a similar story when it comes to how Argentina today engages with the first World Cup it hosted and won in 1978.
The religion of Argentina is soccer, and winning a World Cup is like the ultimate in this religion. But the 1978 Cup is a cup that Argentines don't talk a lot about because inextricably linked to an extremely dark period in Argentina's history.
That dark history is known as Argentina's Dirty War, a brutal military junta led by General Jorge Rafael Videla, in which as many as 30,000 Argentines were killed or disappeared. The 1978 World Cup took place right in the middle of Videla's 5-year reign, and one of his most notorious detention and torture centers, known as ESMA, was just a mile away from the main stadium for the tournament. I guess you could say that wasn't a good look, but with calls in Europe growing for a boycott of the 1978 Argentina tournament, the junta knew it needed to clean up its image. So who did it call? Well, as my former MSNBC colleague Rachel Maddow once said, when evil needs public relations, evil has Burson Marsteller on speed dial. The junta gave the American PR giant $1 million contract to help with their optics issues. And so, as political prisoners were tortured just down the road, the World Cup opening ceremony kicked off with a release of white doves to symbolize peace.
You have tens of thousands of people being disappeared forcibly, being placed into concentration camps, being tortured, being killed. And meanwhile, you have this World Cup and celebration of like peace and show of Argentine soft power. And so that the dichotomy of this extremely dark, violent, painful period in Argentine history and winning the World Cup, hosting and winning the World Cup, is very painful for a lot of people. So certainly when I was growing up, we talked a lot about the 1980s World Cup that we won and winning against the British and the significance of this and Maradona. But the 78 Cup was something you just kind of didn't talk about.
Videla wanted to do whatever he could to make people forget the darkness. Remember what we've already learned in this series from Trump and Mussolini? What do you do when you're committing crimes? Distract, distract, distract.
Right.
Videla did it by projecting an image of Argentina to the rest of the world with new stadiums and color TV broadcasts, but not for Argentines.
The junta was extremely aware of the importance of soccer. I mean, there was an internal project of rallying the troops, of rallying patriotism. You know, this becomes a push to build new stadiums and remodel stadiums. It's a rally the troops, massive patriotic, let's all get excited about this. They understood that this was the religion of the people. And, you know, you had to control that religion.
And like with Mussolini in 1934, Videla wanted to win. Just ask the Peruvian team from that World Cup. As they were preparing for their match against Argentina, they got a surprise visitor in the changing room, General Videla himself. As the story goes, the president of Argentina showed up to intimidate them. And if that was his goal, it worked. Argentina won 6-0 in a suspiciously one-sided match. But wait, it gets better. Argentina also donated 35,000 tons of grain to Peru, which many see as payment for throwing that match. That Argentina ended up winning the whole tournament was just the icing on the cake. Actually, let's take the analogy further. There was a cherry on top as well, a couple of them, in the form of visits from FIFA President João Havelange and former US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. The two helped sanitize Argentina's image on the global stage, hobnobbing with Videla and undermining US President Jimmy Carter's attempts to pressure the general on human rights.
I think in that moment, it was a PR victory. It was so important to foreign policy that, like, you have Henry Kissinger going to it. So obviously this wasn't just like some throwaway tournament. This was soft power.
In 2022, Jasmine launched The Last Cup, a podcast series exploring what seemed to be Lionel Messi's last chance of winning a World Cup. It's a story that ended in joy for Messi and for Argentina, who won the tournament. But even after experiencing moments like that, Jasmine says she's always felt the darker side of the game lurking just around the corner.
I grew up in a soccer neighborhood in Argentina, and certainly I would love it and I would enjoy it and I would be passionate. And so many times it would freak me out because you had these masses of people who were really riled up, and it was the escape valve. And that escape valve often turned into violence. Very often it turned into violence. And I think the junta understood that. They understood that this was the escape valve. In fact, when the junta takes over, when the coup happens, one of the first things they do is announce that soccer games will be broadcast publicly. There's an understanding that this is the religion of the people and the escape valve, and you need to be able to control it. So I think in that moment, yes, it was just like this tsunami of passion and joy. And then, at some point in the years that came, they were no longer able to hide that tens of thousands of people were going missing, that, so many Argentines had a sibling or a parent or a child who had just been picked up off the street and was gone now. And so sports washing works for a moment, there's a moment, and then everyone has to go back to a life of terror and distress.
Mussolini, Videla, Trump, rulers defined by terror and distress. The threads between them abundantly clear. Get a World Cup, deflect and distract from your own issues at home, and above all else, get FIFA to provide you cover. And on that point, when it comes to recent FIFA history, one particularly fateful day in 2010 stands out.
2018 FIFA World Cup, ladies and gentlemen, will be organized in Russia. The winner to organize the 2022 FIFA World Cup is Qatar.
How Russia and Qatar ended up getting the hosting rights for the last two World Cups is a whole story in itself. One of alleged bribery and corruption that was even part of a US Department of Justice investigation into FIFA. We'll get into that more in episode 3. But putting aside for now how the bids were won, just looking at the host nations from a human rights perspective, the story here follows a very familiar arc. It's hard to remember now, but for much of the 2000s, many in the West saw Vladimir Putin as a modernizer who could bring Russia into the liberal world order. But by the time Russia hosted the 2018 World Cup, that framing had long been shattered. Because by then, Putin's Russia had already cracked down on opposition at home, invaded Georgia, invaded Crimea, armed Bashar al-Assad as he murdered his own people in Syria, and had been found to have shot down a Malaysian Airlines plane. And yet, like with Mussolini and Videla and these days Trump, when it came to the World Cup, the international community embraced Putin and his tournament warmly. This time, instead of giving out a peace prize, Infantino actually accepted an Order of Friendship medal from Putin after the tournament and said that we, presumably the whole world, all fell in love with Russia during the tournament. The two were together a lot during the World Cup as well. And Minky Worden, who leads Human Rights Watch's work on sports washing, says the impact of that was massive.
I think the most salient image from the Russia World Cup was Gianni Infantino and Vladimir Putin sitting side by side. And at the time, it was really giving the leader of Russia something that he desperately needed, which was international credibility. And so instead of, and this was actually 2 years after FIFA adopted a human rights policy. So instead of upholding its own human rights policies, instead FIFA was seen as downplaying the human rights abuses and risks inside Russia itself, and actually lifting up Vladimir Putin. So it's really, first of all, classic sports washing.
Unlike Trump, Putin threw the door open to tourists, offering them visa-free travel, putting the best of Russia on display and hiding his crimes. The Russian team's unexpected win over Spain to make the quarterfinals only added to the moment. Not even a small protest by the anti-government band Pussy Riot during the final, or heavy rain during the trophy presentation, could dampen Putin's mood as he stood next to Infantino and French President Emmanuel Macron. What happened after that? Well, as we all know, within 4 years of the tournament, Putin invaded Ukraine. The ongoing war there has killed over 100,000 people, and Putin has since been indicted at the International Criminal Court for war crimes. It's worth pointing out the 2018 World Cup was also morally compromised for other reasons, including labor exploitation and unsafe conditions for migrant workers from Central Asia, Ukraine, and North Korea who built the tournament's infrastructure. According to Human Rights Watch, there were at least 17 worker deaths at Russian World Cup construction sites. The Russian government didn't deny the deaths, but pushed back against the reports of labor abuses.
The Human Rights Watch's main researcher on migrant labor rights was arrested at the Volgograd Stadium when he was documenting abuses. So this was not a climate where civil society was welcome to document human rights abuses. If anything, you could say it was actually a very dangerous tournament for that. And, I think it also showed other leaders how they could promise to uphold human rights and then take a very different approach when the tournament was coming.
But no World Cup has been more associated with migrant labor exploitation and deaths than Qatar 2022. Now, Qatar, unlike Russia in 2018 and the US right now, also got pretty unfairly attacked, in my view, for some things when it hosted the World Cup, and we'll come to that in a moment. But even to this day, people argue over how many migrant workers tragically died working on the World Cup construction sites in Qatar. It was a huge issue at the time. Even the Qataris admitted it was in the hundreds before walking that number back. But no one can deny there was a migrant labor issue at that World Cup tied to low pay, awful working and living conditions, and restrictions on workers' movements through what's known as the kafala system, which Human Rights Watch was tracking closely at the time.
This was a World Cup that was preceded by a decade of very serious and preventable abuses of migrant workers. And part of the problem is and actually a quite terrible human rights legacy. So the government of Qatar, when it bid for the World Cup, had in place the kafala labor system that did not protect the rights of migrant workers at a time when the World Cup was about $220 billion worth of infrastructure, which includes 8 stadiums, includes hundreds of thousands of hotel rooms, infrastructure, expanding the airport. So all of these abuses were known to be a problem in advance of when the World Cup was awarded.
And Qatar didn't make reporting on these issues easy, despite being home to Al Jazeera, where I still do a show, full disclosure. It's undeniable that harsh laws around speech and expression made it pretty difficult to get to the bottom of the issue of migrant worker deaths at 2022 stadium sites. The tournament there also brought much scrutiny to Qatar's record on LGBTQ rights. Same-sex relations are criminalized in that country and punishable by up to 7 years in prison. In the run-up to the 2022 World Cup, Human Rights Watch reported on the arrest, detention, and even beating of some LGBTQ people in Qatar. The Qataris disputed that report. So look, despite hosting a hugely successful tournament, one I attended, any attempts at sports washing by Qatar may have actually backfired. Hosting the World Cup, no matter how good a job they did hosting it, only ended up highlighting their human rights issues, not hiding them. Just listen to Human Rights Watch.
I think it's a quite terrible human rights legacy because there were abuses of press freedom. There were, despite assurances that LGBT fans would be protected, they felt threatened and harassed. This was really not a good human rights legacy, and in fact, one that is still unresolved because FIFA still has not paid the families of migrant workers who died delivering its World Cup.
And as we bring things back to the present, this Trump World Cup of 2026, Minky says what happened in Russia and Qatar was supposed to be an opportunity for FIFA to right some wrongs. In addition to its human rights policy, which we talked about in episode 1, FIFA worked with hosts US, Canada, Mexico to adopt a human rights framework for this World Cup.
There's a close link between the 2018 World Cup in Russia, the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, and the 2026 World Cup in the United States. And that's because the 2026 World Cup in the United States was supposed to be the first ever World Cup with a human rights framework, including protections for workers, fans, players, and communities. The reason for this is that the human rights abuses around the World Cup in Russia, and Human Rights Watch did a series of reports focusing on labor rights, the lack of protection for people with LGBT rights, threats to press freedom and civil society. So the World Cup in 2026 was supposed to be a break with this really disgraceful past of particularly failing to protect the workers who were literally delivering the World Cup.
But as we know, that's not what's happening.
Since taking office in January of 2025, Donald Trump has rolled out abusive policies targeting immigrants, protesters, human rights defenders, transgender people, and civil society. So instead of this being a World Cup that welcomes the world, I think it's credible to say that the world is not welcome at this World Cup.
When you look at the history of FIFA's alliances with authoritarian regimes, it's not surprising that we've ended up here. All of these governments were responsible for some pretty heinous things. But as we talked about in episode 1, it's worth repeating how they aren't always given the same level of scrutiny. I mean, let's not forget how much noise there was around Qatar last time around, with people calling for boycotts and teams even taking moral stands against the host nation. In case you've forgotten, here's a little reminder.
The United States should boycott these games. Qatar, slave labor inducing. People are dying to build this World Cup. It's horrible on almost every dimension. I call for a boycott right now.
Denmark will wear, quote, mourning colored T-shirts at the World Cup to express its criticism over the human rights record of host nation Qatar.
Heather, the Australian men's team will take part in the upcoming World Cup next month, but they've released a video echoing the concerns of human rights organizations about the host nation.
Will we see as many commentators and teams engaging in acts of protest like this as this US World Cup continues? Against ICE, against the erosion of LGBTQ rights, against the war in Iran or the US aiding of a genocide in Gaza? So far, it doesn't seem like it. And that's a double standard that, I have to say, reeks of racism, specifically of anti-Arab, anti-Muslim racism. I mean, think about it. Russia 2018, Qatar 2022, the United States 2026. The Qataris have their human rights issues, as I've already pointed out, especially when it comes to labor rights and a lack of democracy. But come on. They haven't illegally invaded, occupied, annexed, or bombed other countries like Russia has in Ukraine or the United States has in Iran and Venezuela. And yet, just remember the ridiculous uproar when Argentina won the tournament in Qatar. Remember how Qatar's emir put an Arab cloak, a bisht, on Captain Lionel Messi during the trophy presentation. Of all the things you could criticize the emir in Qatar for, that wasn't one of them. The Brazilian legend Pelé was given a sombrero to wear after winning the 1970 World Cup in Mexico. Was there outrage then? And what if Trump puts a cowboy hat, or God help us, a red MAGA hat, on this year's winners? But look, all of this, the hypocrisy, but also the whole history we've just walked you through, 1934, 1978, 2018, 2022, it just all makes me feel so depressed. Because, as I've said before, I love football, and I will continue to get sucked into these games and the drama unfolding right now on the pitch and over the next few weeks, as I do every 4 years. But what I shouldn't do, what none of us should do, is ignore the drama that happens off the pitch, often at the same time. And yes, it's an uneasy feeling. Jasmine, who's covering this World Cup, but usually covers immigration, she feels it too.
For the last 14 months, I've been reporting on the horrific conditions in which people are being held and what I would call temporary disappearances, right? Someone gets picked up and for about a week, you don't know where they are. And then they pop up in Louisiana. And so it's really something as a reporter to go from that to now go to football, soccer, and this moment of celebration and joy. It's given me a lot of whiplash. And I think for a lot of Americans have this feeling, a lot of Americans I've spoken to have this feeling of utter shock and horror at what's happening. I mean, listen, like I started the year out in Minneapolis, right? Covering people being shot and killed, execution style, getting tear gassed. And a couple of months later, I'm covering this massive sporting event. And I think it's important that we look at sports, and it's important for me to look at football as something very complex and holding a lot of truths, right? So like, yes, I love football so much, I love the culture of it and what it represents. And I also hate it so much, I hate the culture of it and what it represents and how governments deploy it. And I think that is how we need to look at sporting events, with a mix of equal parts love and trepidation.
And that's the dark side of the World Cup. We'll see you soon for episode 3, our final episode in this series, when we'll be casting a spotlight on the chief villain in all of this, FIFA. See you then.
And ladies and gents, as you watch with me, there's 2 parts. Like I say, I could play a third part, but it's going to be too long of the video, so I will have the part 3 next Saturday. I just want to make some little points here that I was writing now. And they talk about all the things related to sport washing and all that, and I agree 100%. But one thing that caught my attention is how much money has been spent by taxpayers now in effort of the World Cup in the United States, as well what's coming for the 2028 Olympic Games, Summer Olympic Games that's coming in the next 2 years in California. I'm all for the sports. I'm all for the World Cup. And for those that follow me on TikTok, during the World Cup, I was coming live on some matches that I was watching. And I'm watching the World Cup since 1978. Was about 7 years old that time. I don't remember too much of that. 1982, that was in Spain, I remember. And the other ones, I have more memories of it. But like I said, I'm all forward because the World Cup is a celebration of different cultures and football. And I refuse to call soccer. It's football. That's how it's called. The whole world calls the sport football. That's what it is. I don't know. In America, because they have the American football, they want to call soccer. They create this number that doesn't make name that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I always call football. That's what it is. That has been since the creation of the sport. All right. So, and then also now the Quran, I'm on correction to do because in the beginning I say that was the 6-0 against Chile, the corruption, but now was against Peru, not Chile. It was against Peru. That basically they pay the players. The president or the dictator of Argentina at the time went to the locker room. I don't know if they threatened. Who knows? Only the players. Now the Peruvian players can testify if some of those still alive, or maybe some family members can testify what was said in that locker room. But one thing certain, they got paid. If you do a search, I saw some documents in Brazil related to what's going on, the corruption and how FIFA plays. I watched some YouTube channels from Brazilian channels that report that the players later on confessed that they got paid to let Argentina win 6-0 because that was the only reason the Argentina could qualify if they had beat Peru by 6-0. So, and then one thing they say now, João, he said João Blanche, but the name, he was a Brazilian dude. He was the president of FIFA at the time. He was the president of the the Brazilian Confederation of Football. And then he became president of FIFA. And his name, correct pronunciation, is João Avelange. It was a Brazilian dude. And then I got close saying all the things that FIFA states. Now the FIFA has a policy on human rights. And if FIFA had followed its own policy, the World Cup should be here in Mexico and Canada. The United States should be completely out. But like I say, and was showing in this two video, Infantino was kissing President Trump's ass for a long time. And last year, the Club World Cup in the United States, if I was the Chelsea players, the Chelsea president, and the Chelsea coach, I would make sure that the real trophy should be given to the winners, not stay at the White House, because Infantino ended up giving that to Trump. The real trophy that has 24 characters of gold should come to Chelsea players and not stay in the White House. That was a demand that I would make at that day. But hey, it is what it is, ladies and gentlemen. So, once again, part 3 is coming next Saturday. So, like I said, I don't want to have this video too long. And if you like this video, ladies and gentlemen, do me a favor. Click on the like button, share this video, and if you like the work that I do, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. I appreciate your support. So please be safe, be kind, and be blessed, and do the best what you can do with what you got. Salute. And I see you next Saturday. Holla!
Sucker rappers get lost. Coming from the bottom, moving straight to the top.